We are taking a deep dive into the Doors song Riders on the Storm. The song was recorded somewhere between December 1970 and January 1971. This was the final album that was ever made by the Doors. Ray Manzarek is the keyboard player. This man has had a huge influence on keyboard players, myself included, and keyboard players all around the world. And for good reason. The guy came up with brilliant musical parts that are instantly recognizable and that you don't forget when you think of songs like Light My Fire with that signature organ part that everybody knows as soon as you hear it. It's just brilliant. Or songs like Hello, I Love You. Or songs like Break On Through to the Other Side. The list goes on and on. The Doors had tons and tons of hits. They were led by a charismatic rock star frontman by the name of Jim Morrison. And this is the final album that they made, and this song is the final song on the album LA Woman. Interestingly enough, this would be the last recording that Morrison ever made. 6 months later, unfortunately, he was gone. But he left behind a legacy of tons of music. A huge piece of work left behind by this man, just incredible. Anyway, the Doors went into their rehearsal space in West Hollywood, not a studio, and just started recording this record. Morrison did all of his vocals in the bathroom for the natural reverb of the bathroom, and the band all played together, looking at each other in a room that was about 10 by 10. This is the first record that Ray Manzarek didn't play the bass on, because Ray played left-hand bass on every single Doors record that had ever been made up to this point, which in itself is amazing when you think about it as a keyboard player, that he was able to play all of these amazing parts with his right hand, but also hold down the bass chair with his left hand. It's incredible. So on this record, they decided to do something slightly different and bring in a bass player for the first time. The bass player's name was Jerry Scheff, who happened to be Elvis Presley's bass player. This record is an incredible piece of art, and I'm really excited to talk about Riders on the Storm because as a keyboard player, it dives into a couple of concepts that are extremely important. I chose Riders on the Storm as part of this course because it covers so many important concepts that you can use as a keyboard player. The first thing we're going to get started on is what I call Ray's comping toolbox. Here we go. Ray Manzarek creates all of the chords for this song off something called the Dorian scale. The Dorian scale looks like this. This song is in the key of E minor, and the Dorian scale is like this. You might recognize this scale because it's a D major scale. Dorian means the second step, so this is the second step of the D major scale. The D major scale looks like this. This is exactly the same scale, just starting off its second step, which is E. Another great way to remember a Dorian scale is to remember it as a number formula. The number formula for the Dorian scale is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. Of course, if you use a number formula like that, you can apply it to any major scale and it will give you your Dorian scale in every key. This scale sounds amazing to improvise on. A lot of people use this in conjunction with a minor pentatonic scale. In Riders on the Storm, he creates every single chord that he uses off of this scale. And here's what I mean. The first chord is E minor, which uses, of course, notes from the E Dorian scale. I'm going to create chords off of the Dorian scale. Second chord is F sharp minor. Third chord is G major. Fourth chord is A major. Fifth chord is B minor. Sixth chord is C sharp diminished. And finally, the seventh chord is D major. So if we look at these chords and we play them over an E bass line, this is the foundation of Ray's comping toolbox. He uses these chords to create every comping pattern for every verse of this song. Here's the first verse. In the first verse, Ray comps with the D major chord going to an E minor chord like this. If you're playing this with the bass line, the comp starts on beat 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 1. Just like that. And you can play whatever inversions of these chords you feel comfortable with. Whatever sounds good to you is okay. I'm playing these in the second inversion. This is about having fun and doing your own thing, so if you want to play them in their primary inversion, you can do that too, and they sound great. It all works. There was a bass player on this song, but if you want to be well-rounded while playing this song, here's how the bass part goes. It's an E minor chord and an A major chord. Goes like this on the E minor chord. Then it goes to the A chord and goes like this. And it just repeats that pattern over and over again. I'll play it lower where it should be played. And of course that just loops over and over again. It's actually really fun to play, and as the story goes, it's very difficult to play on the bass. And when they asked the bass player to play this, it took him about an hour to figure out how to get his thumb over top of the bass to play it, because it doesn't really sit well on the bass. So it's actually a keyboard bass line that Manzarek wrote and then asked Jerry to play. So it actually sounds really great when you play it yourself on a Rhodes patch like this. That's the bass part. Let's talk about the second part of the comping pattern. This goes up to A and uses slash chords like this. A minor, B minor over an A bass, C over an A bass, D over an A bass. Again, all of these chords are built from the Dorian scale. The bass player pedals on the A. Ray Manzarek ascends on these chords, A minor, B minor, C, and D over the A bass. Sounds amazing. Just like that. The bass part is. That's exactly what he plays. I might do it a little bit lower actually. Right hand with it. That's the second part of the progression. The third part of the progression goes like this. Just a D chord to a C chord. The C chord is not from the Dorian scale, so there's a little bit of an alteration there. Bassline. Let's put all three pieces of that progression together. Here's how Ray comps through verse 2. Ray uses an E minor chord, F sharp minor chord, and a G chord, all of them in their second inversion, and all of these chords are based or come from the E Dorian scale. E minor, F sharp minor, G major. It just kind of rocks back and forth like this. Here's how it goes with the left hand. And that's verse 2. There's only one final comping pattern in the song, and it's what Ray plays underneath the guitar solo. It goes like this. The chords are E minor and F sharp minor in their second inversion. Here's how they go with the bass line. And that's how Ray comps underneath the guitar solo. We talk a lot about comping, and what comping means is playing rhythm when you're not playing melody. And where this would apply is when a singer is doing their vocal, you would play a rhythm underneath the singer. Or if somebody was doing a guitar solo, you would also play rhythm underneath the guitar solo, and that is called comping. When you're not comping, you're soloing, which is a lot of fun too, but there's a difference. There's comping, playing rhythm, and soloing, which is playing melody. That's all you need to know about comping. Next up is Ray's solo toolbox. We're going to talk about all the concepts that he uses to create the amazing solo that is Riders on the Storm. Let's talk about the Dorian scale. Ray uses this in conjunction with the minor pentatonic scale, and it works beautifully. So let's incorporate this. It's amazing because it's just a D major scale, but starting off in E. But when you play the D major scale in an E minor song like this, it takes on a whole different vibe. It's really fun to learn somebody else's solo. But when you understand the concepts behind the solo, you can make it your own, and you can improvise and play your own lines. Learning your Dorian scales is actually a superpower as it relates to soloing. Here's an example of how Ray beautifully incorporates a Dorian scale into Riders on the Storm. The line that you hear right in the intro, the beautiful descending line. It's just a Dorian scale. It's just a Dorian scale played in thirds all the way down the piano. It's so simple, but it sounds amazing when he uses it as an intro. The next concept in Ray's solo toolbox is the minor pentatonic scale and the blues scale. The minor pentatonic scale and the blues scale are exactly the same scale. The blues scale just has one note that the minor pentatonic doesn't, which is the flat 5. The minor pentatonic scale looks like this. I love to think of this in numbers. It's 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, and 1. And if you know that, you can figure out your minor pentatonic scales in every single key. The only difference between a minor pentatonic scale and a blues scale is the flat 5. Here's what a blues scale looks like. So it's that B flat that's the only difference between the blues scale and the minor pentatonic scale. Again, with minor pentatonics and blues scales, anything that you play in this song with the minor pentatonics or the blues scales will sound amazing. You may ask, what is the difference between a minor pentatonic and a blues scale, and why would sometimes people use minor pentatonics rather than blues scales? Because they're so similar. Minor pentatonics, because they don't have the flat 5 in them, are actually really easy to create patterns off of. Minor pentatonics, you can build patterns that have a lot of speed and a lot of fireworks to them that might be a lot more difficult to play on the blues scale simply because of that flat 5 note. So Ray uses a blend of these two scales in Riders on the Storm. So a quick review is that the minor pentatonic in E minor is 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, back to 1. In letters, that would be E, G, A, B, D, and E. The blues scale is 1, flat 3, 4, flat 5, 5, flat 7, 1. Or in letters, it would be E, G, A, B flat, B, D, and E. Let's go through a couple of licks. I'm just going to improvise with these two scales over the Riders on the Storm bass line. Here we go. The next piece of the soloing toolbox is shapes. Guitar players think in shapes all the time. They'll have different shapes of pentatonic scales that they kind of move their hands into, and they'll work soloing in these shapes and then move down into the next shape and solo in that shape, and then move down to the next shape and solo in that shape. It's no different with the keyboards. And when we break down the minor pentatonic scale or the blues scale, which we've talked about, which are almost identical, we can break them down into two shapes. The first shape is this. It's the first 5 notes of the blues scale or the first 4 notes of the minor pentatonic scale, and your hand just naturally falls into this shape. The second shape is this. We have 2 shapes on the blues scale or the minor pentatonic. One is right here. And if I go up, you're into shape, let's call it shape number 1 and shape number 2. You're into shape number 2. And if you were to go down, your hand automatically falls into shape number 1. Here's shape number 1. Here's shape number 2. Another way to think of them is as clusters of chords, just like this. Shape 1. Shape 2. Here's an example of how Ray Manzarek uses shapes in Riders on the Storm. Let's talk about the very first lick of the solo. That's shape number 2, right there. He exclusively stays in shape number 2 for the first few lines of the solo. The next line of the solo, he goes into shape number 1. He's back into shape number 2. Shape number 2. A big part of the solo, he stays in shape number 1, this part. Here's an example of going from shape 1 to shape 2, from shape 1 to shape 2 in a solo. So have some fun making up your own solos with the backing track using the Dorian scale, the minor pentatonic, the blues scale, and going from shape 1 to shape 2. Another component of the solo in Riders on the Storm is inverted fifths. Inverted fifths are a superpower for improvising. We've talked about them in the organ course. John Lord from Deep Purple extensively used inverted fifths to play with guitar players and play all those great songs because they sound like rock and roll. They sound amazing. Interestingly enough, Ray uses inverted fifths in this solo. So let's break it down. There is a section of the solo that goes like this. And those little babies right there are inverted fifths. Inverted fifths are a fifth, but with the fifth on the bottom, not on the top. Typically when we think of fifths on the piano or on the organ, we think of them like this. That would be a fifth in E. The root is on the bottom, and the fifth is on the top. So inverted fifths just take the fifth and put them on the bottom of the chord, and it makes a huge difference to how the chord sounds. That would be an inverted fifth for E. If we take this one step further, we apply inverted fifths to a minor pentatonic scale. This is where it gets really, really cool. Minor pentatonic scale goes E, G, A, B, D, and E. What we're going to do is take that scale and go E and make it an inverted fifth, go to G, make an inverted fifth, A, make an inverted fifth, B inverted fifth, D inverted fifth, and then back to E. E, G, A, B, D, and E. I love inverted fifths. You can use them in so many different forms of music. So let's have some fun and improvise with some inverted fifths. Love those. They just sound awesome. The next part of this solo is incorporating rhythm I love the way Ray Manzarek incorporates rhythm into the back half of the solo to give it energy. Sometimes we overlook the simplicity of soloing and think that we have to play something really complicated. But actually, if you just take some simple chords and apply some rhythm to it, it's just the ticket for adding that extra element of energy and vibe to the solo. Here's how the rhythm is incorporated into Riders on the Storm. Even that last part of the solo where there's nothing fancy, he's not playing a firepower fast licks, he's just playing one chord and applying a really cool rhythm to it and making it groove, and that's what it's all about. It's finding that rhythm, putting it in the pocket and making it groove. And sometimes that's just what you need to make amazing solos. One thing that I love about this solo is the way that Ray uses blues phrasing. And what I mean by that is he'll play a lick and then he'll give it some space or give it a breath and wait, and then play another lick and give it some space and wait. He doesn't just play all the time through the solo. It's very lyrical. It sounds like sentences. It sounds like he's having a conversation with you, like he's talking to you. And that's the whole beauty of blues phrasing. Here's an example. Nice space. Space. And he uses a very traditional blues phrasing model for the solo where he gives it that breath in between every line. What happens is it's almost like he's telling a story, and the tension and the thing is just building the whole time. And finally he ends it with that great rhythmic energy that we were talking about. It's a very well put together solo. Great solos incorporate a few devices. One of them is phrasing. Another is harmony, what scales you choose over the chords. Another is rhythm. Sometimes when you're soloing, it's about what you don't play as opposed to what you do play. And so much of what makes great solos is about leaving those spaces and not feeling like you have to play all of the time. I always reference B.B. King as an example because he was one of the best at it, where he would play a note and it was all about what he didn't play and the space that he would leave that would build a tension that would make you want to hear what he was going to play next. And he took you on a journey, and that's exactly what happens in this solo. All right, let's talk about making this solo your own. When I learn a solo, a lot of times I want to learn exactly what the musician played because it's new information for me. It's exciting to think of licks in a different way than maybe I play them. Learning to mimic or play exactly like the other musician is a process of learning. And once you get it under your hands and you're comfortable with it and you understand the concepts, you can then take it and make it your own. Don't be afraid with the backing track to try some of your own stuff. You'll notice that when I play with the backing track, because we're talking about Riders on the Storm, it's such a quintessential song and I want to pay tribute to Ray, I play a lot of his licks, but I will go off the map and do some of my own stuff. If I was playing with a band on stage, I would definitely make this my own and play a lot of my own licks, and I would encourage you to do so as well. I believe what separates a good musician from a great musician is the ability to take these concepts, make them your own, and create your own special style and voice on the instrument. There's room for everybody, and I can guarantee you when Ray Manzarek played this solo in the studio, he wasn't thinking about anybody else than exactly how he wanted to play it in his style And that's what's so special about it. Make it your own. Okay, let's get to the intro. This is one of the most memorable parts of this song. It starts with an E minor pentatonic scale, like this. It then uses part of a Dorian scale, like this. It's what this song and this solo is all about. It's the interplay between the minor pentatonic or the blues scale and the Dorian scale. Again, starts with the minor pentatonic to the Dorian scale. Sweet. The next part is the Dorian descending line in thirds. Starts off a B right here. Ends right there on an A, and then plays two chords, a D major and an E minor. I'd like to talk about the fingering on this Dorian lick. It's a little tricky to play. To be honest with you, I don't really think about the fingering when I play this lick, and I would encourage you that whatever fingering works well for you, go with that one. There is notation for this Dorian lick provided in the course, and it has suggested fingering that I would use. And I will say that I will often change my fingering every single time that I'll play it, but I'll give you a suggested fingering. But I would encourage you to find a fingering that works well for you, that you're comfortable with, that allows you to play this lick fluidly. I love the backing tracks. It's got one of my favorite studio musicians playing the guitar part on it. It's got a rain track, and it almost makes you feel like you're playing with the Doors in the studio. It's so much fun. All you need to remember about the backing track is that there's some hi-hat clicks. It goes 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're into the track. We have changed the arrangement of this song a little bit, and I'll talk about that with the chord chart. But the way that the arrangement works is that we've left the whole back half of the song open for keyboard improvisation. Just so it makes a great practice tool, and you've got quite a few minutes to be able to try a bunch of licks and try a bunch of these things that we've talked about. So when it's your turn to solo at the end, it just goes for 5 or 7 minutes straight, and just have fun and just try everything and just imagine that you're playing with the band and try to incorporate these concepts. So there's a chord chart that's included with the Riders on the Storm module. And this chord chart is written in a Nashville numbers style. Although we're not using the actual numbers, we're using the letter names because it's in a minor. We're using the letter names such as E minor and A and B and D and C. The chord chart is still set up exactly like a Nashville number chord chart, which is really easy to read. The beautiful thing about Nashville number charts is they're all written on one page, and it's very clear exactly where the song starts, exactly where the song ends. And there's a reason why people use these Nashville number charts, because otherwise you'd have sheets and sheets of paper in front of you that you might have to turn or, oh geez, where am I? But with a Nashville number chart, it's just all beautifully laid out on one single page. The first verse and intro of the song is on E minor. When you look at the chart, there is 13 bars of E minor before the first verse starts. When the first verse starts, there's 4 bars of E minor. Now what I mean by a bar of E minor is this is a bar of E minor in Riders on the Storm. That's 1 bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's one bar or one measure, however you like to think of it. So in the first verse, there's 4 bars of E minor. And this is the only thing that you really need to know about this chord chart that might be a little tricky, is in the Nashville number charts, when they break up bars into chords that are 2 beats each. And what I mean by that is if you had 2 different chords that make up one bar of 4 beats. One chord is A, maybe it's 2 beats. The next chord is B minor, and it's 2 beats. In order to show that on a Nashville number chart, they will just put simply a line underneath those 2 chords. And all that means when you see a line underneath those 2 chords is just to give them 2 beats each. And as long as you can remember that, that's the hardest part of the chart. The chart's really simple to follow. It's broken up into intro, verse 1, verse 2, guitar solo. You'll see something that says TA. That's called a turnaround. A turn is a little part of the progression where they might play a little figure just before they drop it into another verse. It's kind of like a re-intro is how some people think of it as well. Some people call it a re-intro, some people call it a turnaround. On this chart, it's called a TA, which means a turnaround. There's 2 bars of turnaround. Then finally it goes back into verse 3, and there's 12 bars of verse 3, and then the entire outro of the backing track is there for you to solo to. And I think there's probably about 3 minutes of solo time for you just to try licks, try the different concepts, get comfortable. The only tricky part in the chords of Riders on the Storm, I'm just going to run through them in case you're not familiar with slash chords. There are some slash chords in this chart, and you'll see them. And they start in verse 1, and there's an A minor, and then there's a B minor slash A, and a C slash A, and a D slash A. When you see this, the note that's on the bottom, and it says slash A, slash A, slash A, that means that the left hand plays an A bass line through this whole section, but the right hand chords move. So for instance, play an A in your left hand, you play an A minor in your right hand. A B minor in your right hand, but it's over an A, so that's why it's called a B minor slash A. Then a C slash A, and then a D slash A. So there are 4 slash chords in this song, which, by the way, sound awesome. But that's really the only tricky part in the chords, and if you can understand that, the rest is a piece of cake. And that's a basic overview of how the chart works for Riders on the Storm. Now it's time for the good stuff. Let's play along with the Riders on the Storm backing track and put all of these concepts to use.